How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Gaijin Gamer in the house, and today I'm gonna be doing a quick review on the Samsung Galaxy A13. Now, first thing to note, this is a budget phone. Budget phone means budget specs. So speaking of the budget price, this phone retails at about 560 UAE dirhams, or about 150 US dollars. So that is as cheap and as budget as it can get. But don't let the price scare you. Being a budget phone doesn't mean it doesn't have specs. For example, starting off with the display, this phone has 6.6 inches of PLS LCD with a resolution of 1080 by 2400. Now that's 400 pixel per inch. For the processor, you got Samsung's own in-house 8-core Exynos 850 with Mali G52 as its GPU. That means budget specs, unfortunately, but at this price range, you cannot complain. For the camera, you got a quad setup, as seen on the box over here. You got a quad setup. You got a 50 megapixel wide, a 5 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now, it shoots video at 30 frames per second. For the selfie camera, it's got 8 megapixel wide angle lens. It also shoots video at 1080p 30 frames per second. For the software, the phone comes from the factory in the box at Android 12 running One UI 4.1, but it's upgradable to sorry about that. It's upgradable to Android 13 with One UI 5.1. Now this phone comes in 3 different tiers. It comes in 32 gigs at 3 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage at 4 gigs of RAM, and 128 gigs for 4 gigs of RAM. Now, before you say anything, I already know what you're about to say. There is a 128 gigabyte model with 6 gigs of RAM. Unfortunately, in the Middle East, this is not available. You only have the 3 tiers I mentioned, which is 32 3 gigs, 64 4 gigs, and 128 4 gigs. It's got Bluetooth 5.0, Wi-Fi 5, NFC, a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is a big plus to me over the on-screen fingerprint sensor, and it's got Face Unlock. Now for the build, it's got a Gorilla Glass 5 screen on the front, a plastic frame, and a plastic back, which is to be expected with a budget phone. But you know what is not expected with a budget phone? Having a 5000 milliamp battery. This means this battery is probably gonna last you all day long, no matter what you throw at it. It's got a single bottom speaker, dual microphones, Type-C charging, and a headphone jack. A 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Some other companies out there, without mentioning names, need to start taking this into consideration in their budget phones. And speaking of a budget phone, that means that without all the bells and whistles, this phone is pretty light, coming up at around 195 grams. Now it comes in 4 different colors: black, white, peach, and blue. I personally, obviously, went with the blue, if the color wasn't a dead giveaway, it even says so over there on the box. Now, what's missing from the usual things I'm looking for in a phone? No wireless charging, no super fast charging, no IP rating, so that means that your phone is not resistant to either water or dust at all. And also no always on display. Now, as you can tell, something that is nice about this budget phone compared to other budget phones, like let's say for example the A14, even though this is a year-old model, the A13 has a beefy box. And having a beefy box, as you say, it says Galaxy A13 over here. With this beefy box, you know that you're going to have a charger included in the box. Now, the box itself is pretty minimalistic, pretty clean. It doesn't have any pamphlets stuck or on a sticker on the back. And just basically the regular Samsung do not open sealed package sticker that is shown on here. But other than that, the phone is pretty much made for mostly as a budget phone, as a throwaway phone if you're traveling, so you don't have to take your expensive phone if you're afraid It might get damaged, it might get broken, it might get stolen, whatever. I'm not saying any names specifically, but I'm just saying this is like basically a backup phone. Now, without further ado, let's open this box, shall we? Now, it has a slide out action. Immediately, you are greeted with your phone. I chose a blue color, as you can see. Now in the box, you're gonna be getting your 15-watt brick charger, and you're gonna be getting the USB Type A to USB Type C charging cable. You're also gonna be getting, I went a little bit rough with the box, that's why it's kind of torn, but other than that, the box is mostly fine. You're gonna get your SIM injection tool, and that's pretty much what you get in the box. You also get, now you don't even get an instruction manual, which basically means that's it for the box. Now when it comes to the phone, I'm gonna give it a little wipe down because it's a cloth surface. Because there's as you saw earlier, it's a fingerprint magnet on the back. Now you got your quad camera setup with an LED flash. The phone, there you got on the left side, you got your SIM tray. Now this phone has expandable memory. It does accept SD cards up to 1 terabyte, and you don't even need to compromise. Let's say, for example, back in the other days when Duos was something in Samsung, they pretty much, you either had to choose between 2 SIM cards or 1 SIM card and an SD card slot. Now, you no longer need to compromise. You can easily have a micro SD card, a SIM card, and another SIM card. So you can have like an all-in-one kind of phone. Now let's put this one back. On the top, you got your noise cancelling microphone. On the right side, you got your volume rockers, and you got the side-mounted fingerprint, which also doubles as your power button. On the bottom, you got your speaker grill, you got Type-C charging, a microphone, and the 3.5mm headphone jack. Minimal branding on the back, you can barely see the Samsung logo, and the 4 cameras as we explained. Now, this is going to be your ultra-wide, your 5-megapixel ultra-wide, your 50-megapixel wide-angle lens, your 2-megapixel macro, and the 2-megapixel depth sensor. Now, let's turn on the phone. I'll put all my settings into it, and I'll be back in a second. In the meantime, hang around, don't leave. Now, when it comes to the phone, there are a few ways you can open up your phone. You can do the pattern on your pin. Here we go. You can do the pattern or a pin. You can do the fingerprint unlock, which is almost instant, see? There we go. Instant, which is one of the best features about this phone. There's also face unlock, but I'm not gonna get into that now because I'm behind a lot of equipment and it's best not to show it, but you all know how face unlock works. Now, the phone, even though it's just 60 Hz, it is still a beast when it comes to smoothness. I mean, look at this. Look at this display, it is so natural. Swipe up to get to your apps, swipe down to get to your notifications, and swipe down one more time to get to your widgets. The brightness isn't that impressive, might not look that impressive on camera, but let me tell you this, it is actually quite bright in low light situations. Now let's go into the settings real quick. You got the connections, connected devices in case you are pairing it to your smartwatch, like the Samsung Active Watch that I'm currently wearing. You got modes and routines, sounds and vibration. We got the display. You can control the brightness here, you can put it light. There is also adaptive brightness, which adjusts the brightness of the screen depending on your surroundings. The sensor in the front-facing camera, or the sensors around it, If you're in bright sunlight, it's gonna increase that all the way to the top, but I don't like adaptive brightness. I just like putting it on up to almost to the maximum limit, but I'm putting it on maximum limit just for this video so that you can guys see it clearly. There is something known as eye comfort shield, which it actually reduces the amount of blue light and makes it much more easy to look at. However, I personally don't like to use it much because it changes the color of the screen and how I view things and doesn't give me like the full experience. There is the wallpaper and style. You can choose different wallpapers, change the color palette. I went with the teal blue since it's the most close one to the phone. There's of course double colors, which is like the purple and the blue. Actually, this looks much better. There is green and blue. Oh, but I'm digging this one. I'm digging the purple and the blue. It has this like cotton candy color to it. You can dim the screen when dark mode is on. You can choose different themes, different icons, but this will require you to go into the Galaxy Store to choose the themes that you want. The lock screen settings, I'm not gonna get into that now. The home screen settings, you can choose the button layout, the badges, the screen grid. You can make the screen bigger, the folder is bigger. Show app screen button on the home screen, lock screen layout. Security and privacy, to change your biometrics in case you want to add another fingerprint. Let's say, for example, you're holding the phone with the left hand, you want to register the fingerprint of your index finger to open the phone with, because if you lock the phone, try to open it with any other finger other than the unregistered one, it says fingerprint does not match. Keep doing that for a while, it's gonna lock your phone out, you're gonna have to go in through your pattern or your PIN. See? Instantly, because it recognizes the finger. Backup, Google, advanced apps, software updates, user manual, and about the phone. Now, here it says the info about the phone. It even gives you a little icon of the phone. I haven't seen that on Samsung phones for a while. Status information. Software information. Yeah. UI core version 5.1. Now, here's a little thing to consider. It says here one UI core version, not just one UI version. Basically, that means it's got most of the features of the Samsung family, but without all the bells and whistles, and with Android version 13. It came with 12 with the phone, but I updated it to 13 recently. On to the next. Let's see how well the phone displays in a YouTube video. For a second I thought I was actually driving in the game, that's why I was tilting the phone left and right. You can zoom in, zoom to fill, zoom in further. But as you can see, as you can tell, the speakers are actually not half bad. I'm gonna bring the phone closer to the microphone.
Alright, so let's go through the specs real quick. For the display, you got a 6.5-inch LCD panel with a resolution of 720 by 1600. And it's 270 for the PPI control.
As for the quality, decent screen quality. Alright, anyway, now one last thing I want to talk about this phone is the camera. Now, even though this is a quad setup, it doesn't take the best of pictures, but it's also not that bad. Like, let's say for example, I'm gonna take a picture of this mat I've spread out on the table, for example. It is not that great when it comes to detail, but thanks to the software acceleration in the camera, it can pick up a lot of details. Like, you can see the quilting of the fabric here, which is actually nice, which is actually not bad. For a $150 phone, a lot of that having that much stuff in it is actually quite decent in my opinion. Now, it shoots videos at full HD at 30 frames per second, or just at HD for 30 frames per second. Personally, I go with full HD because the higher quality, the better. Now you can choose Pro settings, you can choose macro. Let's say if we choose macro and I go as far in at the fabric, take a photo. Macro is actually quite decent. Like, I'll show you guys the picture that I just took earlier. If I zoom in, I cannot see the fabric very clearly. But if I look at the macro here, now that is impressive. You can't see that and tell me that's not impressive. For a $150 phone, for 550 dirhams, this is practically a steal deal. Of course, you can take more things. You can take pictures oriented for food. Let's say, for example, I bring in this, oh yeah, here's like, for example, a tray of pickles. Now, if I zoom in, for all those who like to post food on Instagram, I'm gonna take a picture of this. And look how vibrant the colors are. Like, oh my God. I'm not a huge fan of pickles myself, but just the colors that's popping up in these pictures, because the camera, the software in the camera adapts the lenses in order and the sensors in them to take pictures of food to make it look more appealing. I'm not a huge fan of pickles myself, but this is actually making me want to have pickles. Thankfully, this has been a really quick and short review, but I really like the phone. I have been using it for the past 2 weeks. It basically does everything you want from a basic phone and more. If you guys like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment telling me what you liked about the video, and if there's something you didn't like as well, leave a comment for me telling me what you didn't like. Constructive criticism is always appreciated, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.